when I had the idea for Nine Women, One Dress, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to write this as a novel because novels get made into movies quicker than screenplays get made into movies.
Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 123 of the podcast. It's July 19th, 2023, as we record this. And today we're talking with author Jane Rosen about transitioning from screenwriting to published author. So that'll be really fun. We don't have any new patrons this week, but you can go to patreon.com/Valerie Isan, IHSAN, and get lots of goodies for even at the $1 tier. Announcements. I still have that one last shared lodging ticket open at the retreat for a woman identified person wanting to share a tipi with 2 beds. That's $650 for all the food, lodging, coaching, instruction, retreat time. So you can go to valerieisan.com/shopping to get that ticket. And my group coaching cohort starts up again September 12th through December 12th. That's $500 for 3 months of weekly group coaching. Works out to about $165 a month. So comparatively speaking, my one-on-one coaching, weekly coaching is $500. So you can see the difference in price for group coaching. So again, valerieisan.com/shopping. What's up with you, Erick?
I would say not a lot, but that would be a lie. Life's pretty hectic, life stuff's happening, but yeah.
And you just put
an
offer on a house?
Put an offer in on a house. Hopefully soon the background here will change. And I'll be in a different city. I won't be far. I'm only looking at moving to Oregon City, which is about a 20-minute drive from here. But it is worlds of difference when it comes to community and all that. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm not nervous, but watching the
Hopeful.
text to see.
Yeah,
I'm hopeful. Yeah. So that's been kind of the big thing for me. What about you?
I'm still getting ready for my retreat next month. Making up all the swag bags and emailing the people and finding out if there's any dietary restrictions and that sort of stuff. Just all the logistics stuff, which I will be doing all month long, I'm sure. What are you reading?
I love swag bags.
I do too. I try to make really cool ones too. Like they're really legit, awesome, really strong canvas bags and pens and journals and stickers and books. And
it's like adult Christmas, you like when you were a kid, Christmas came with all these possibilities. When you get a swag bag at an event, it's like, oh, what could be in here? And
stocking stuffers.
Yeah, my wife and I went to a party, like a big group, the red dress party, the big where
you had to wear a red dress.
I had to wear a red dress. It was pretty awesome. But the swag bag from that party was great. It was like it was just all sorts of cool stuff and like actual like gift certificates to dinners out, and it was terrific. So I love a swag bag. What am I reading? I'm reading Dead in the West by Joe Lansdale. It's a horror western. It's a zombie western. I'm like halfway through it, and there hasn't been a zombie yet, so I'm kind of wondering where the zombie part of zombie western comes in.
I don't know.
It's a legit question. It says zombie on the cover. There's zombies on the cover, but
there's no hint of zombies by the middle of the book. Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah. There's just a lot of old like Western tropes. There's like the preacher and the girl who works at the saloon and the loner with the shotgun. There's all that stuff, but I'm waiting. I'm really waiting for the zombie
Where's
part.
The zombie?
So give me a zombie. I need some undead.
Well, I finally finished reading Rich as F by Amanda Francis and did all the journaling and stuff. And actually, so I have another book set out, and then I got word from my local bookstore that a new book that I pre-ordered came in, which I was really looking forward to. So I think I will read that next. However, I've got 2 client jobs where I need to read their manuscripts. So I kind of feel like maybe that's the reading I'll be doing next. is manuscript reading, because one is a rush job. So I need to quickly read his manuscript and, write a synopsis for him. And then the other diagnostic I have to go through. That one can be read slower, but it's a big book. So, but yeah, the new Willa Reece book is probably the one that I'm going to read next. And I just forgot the title. So Willa Reece, second book. That's what I got to say.
Next on a stack. Jane, what are you reading? We always talk about the books that we're jumping in on. So
I'm reading this one. You Were Always Mine, Christine Pride and Joe Piazza. They're actually a duo. They were originally, Christine was Joe's editor, and they wrote a book called We Are Not Like Them. It's very interesting. There's a lot of race stuff in the books. One of them is Black, one of them is white, and it's really just enjoyable reads that make you think.
Cool.
What is the genre?
It's women's fiction.
Women's fiction.
Yeah.
Very
Yes.
cool.
So question, we'll kind of start maybe segueing slightly into the interview. You're in New York City. Do you have a local bookstore that you go grab your books from? Or like, what's your book acquisition habit that you, how do you?
I live in this, like right near the South Street Seaport under the Brooklyn Bridge. And there's a bookstore, I don't know if you've heard of it, McNally Jackson, that's in the Seaport. So it's like a block and a half from me. It is the most beautiful bookstore. It makes you feel like you're in old New York. I buy a lot of my books there.
McNally what?
Cool.
Jackson.
McNally Jackson.
A few locations, but the Seaport location is just, if you're a bookish person and you're coming to New York City, I highly recommend to visit.
Nice. I'm gonna Google it and see what it looks like.
There's a lot of, lucky for me, there's a lot of great indie bookstores in New York City. Shakespeare and Company, the Corner Bookstore, Three Lives. It just goes on the list. So it's all good.
Yeah, we're in the indie bookstore bubble too. I mean, the Pacific Northwest, we have bookstores all over, but you kind of forget that other places don't have that. So lucky us.
Really don't. They really don't. I've been traveling to some indie bookstores with my book On Fire Island just came out in May, and a great thing that I love doing, aside from like a book chat, is to just sign at an indie bookstore, and you just sit at a table and people just come by, on their walk to get ice cream or after dinner, and stop and chat with you and buy a book, and you get to personalize it. It's actually great fun. I love it. I'm doing one this weekend, Thunder Road Books on the Jersey Shore, and I just did Bethany Beach Books in Bethany Beach, Delaware. It's just a great added fun thing.
Oh yeah.
So you just like hang out you don't have any agenda. You just sort of sit at the table with the pile of books and knit until someone walks by, or what?
Basically, except for the
knitting.
Yeah, I don't know how to knit. I wish I did, but I don't. Yeah, you just kind of sit there, and they order a bunch of books in advance, and you sign them, and you talk, and you write out for someone's birthday, whatever it is they want to give the book for. It's a great. I love meeting my readers, so it's a really fun thing for me.
I am terrified of having that kind of a book signing setup. So I always create a big literary event with like a band and like sometimes more than one reader, and make it an event, because then if nobody shows up for me, like at least somebody will show up, and I won't feel like, oh, I'd be too afraid to just do a solo thing. I've never done one solo.
I did one for my first book in Krakow, Poland. It was the funniest thing. No one came except the woman I asked directions to the bookstore on the street. She came. I'm like, oh, and if you're in the neighborhood, please come. And she's the only one that came. So there were all these chairs set out.
Oh my God.
And I was in the front.
That is my worst nightmare. That is so yucky.
Talked, it was so funny.
But the good side of that is, if you ever are looking at analytics, like where people are buying books, when you sell a copy in Poland, you know exactly who it went to.
Yes.
You have an idea, there's something sort of fun about that too. And that's a great story. You could tell that at conferences and at at writer coffee tables everywhere. I love it.
It was funny. They had a whole window display and everything. It's like, whoa.
So what made you have a really, was the book set in Poland or something? Like, why were you in Poland? That's
That's a
kind of
good
random.
It is very random. So my first book was called 9 Women, One Dress, and it was translated into 10 languages, which was just what a trip, you know, every week getting another note of, you know, from my agent saying, Germany wants it, Poland wants it. It was very exciting. And my daughter was studying, my middle daughter was studying in Prague at the time. So I went to visit her for spring break, and we drove from, I guess, from Prague. We drove all around. We drove to Germany, Austria, all over. And we stopped at bookstores. I arranged it along the way, and it was really great fun. But of course, it wasn't, you know, it's not like I had fans there.
Right.
I don't have
Right.
fans here. So it was fun, though. And that's why
That
I
was
did
your
it.
first book?
Yes.
So tell us, so you were a screenwriter before,
Yes.
and so maybe touch a little bit on life as a screenwriter, what that was like, and then what made you want to transition into novel writing, and then your first book, like, translated into 10 languages. Like, that sounds like a big story. So let's start there.
Okay, well, we could start at the beginning, which
Mhm.
was my kids were in nursery school at a school called the 92nd Street Y in New York City, which is a whole world and a whole thing that I knew nothing about. And the whole admissions process, it became so interesting to me that I decided it was a movie. In my head, it was just a movie. And I went and took a 10-week class on how to write a screenplay. I wrote the script and I sold it to Miramax. It was an insane, just
On how to
beginner.
get your kids enrolled in the school?
No, it was
Oh.
a funny story of, you know, based on the New York City nursery school admissions. Like, it was a
Okay.
romantic comedy with that at the heart of it.
Okay.
And miraculously, I
I
sold
love it. That's terrific.
Your first screenplay. Bam.
My first
Well,
screenplay.
And I just love that's
But
the seed of it. I love that's the seed of it. That
no,
like
it was
ultra
nuts.
competitive upper Manhattan. I love it.
So
Was
then I
it-
was thrown into the world.
Was
screenwriting.
that movie ever made?
No, but it was optioned so many times. It was optioned 3 times from Miramax. Then Penny Marshall had it for a little while. It was adorable script, actually. But the whole process of writing and rewriting, I mean, Erick, you know, like, it's a crazy process. Like, there was one point when I realized how nuts it was. They said to me, okay, you know, we love the script, but could you have the couple in the script, you know, the protagonist and the meet when they're young? They met when they were old. Meet when they're young. I'm like, okay. I went home, you know, wrote a whole cute little meet cute for teenagers, you know, put it in.
Yeah.
Came back with a new script. And there's like 6 people who had opinions, of course, on every draft. And they said, we love this, but could you have them not meet when they're young? That's true. And I was, okay. And I like called my agent. I'm like, how long do I wait before I just hand them back the script I already gave them? And it was a lot of that, a lot of like just crazy directives and notes. And I kept trying to do it and, you know, do what they wanted, because obviously this was my
Right.
first gig. And then one day my lawyer called me and he said, you know, I just want to tell you, I was on the phone with the attorney at Miramax and they told me that you're the best screenwriter that they have right now. And I was like, wow, that's just the biggest compliment ever. The next day my attorney called me. He's like, Jane, they fired you. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, yesterday I was the biggest screenwriter. They're the best. They're like, he's like, yes, well, today you're fired. They're replacing you with someone else. I'm like, okay.
Oh.
So long story short, when I had the idea for 9 Women, One Dress, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to write this as a novel, because novels get made into movies quicker than screenplays get made into movies.
Right.
Oh.
I did.
There
And
was a
that's-
Willamette Writers conference where I remember the person pitching next to me was pitching a screenplay, and I remember hearing the agent say, "That's a great idea. If you really want to see that made, go adapt it into a novel, get the novel published, and then you can sell the screenplay." And the look on the writer's face was like as white as a sheet, in just like in a second. But I've heard that advice. I've heard that all over. So yeah.
It's the truth. If you ask me,
Yeah.
I mean, 9 Women, One Dress is optioned twice. It's going to be optioned again. My book that I just published, On Fire Islands, was a script. It had just gotten to Harvey Weinstein 2 weeks before everything imploded. So I literally wrote 3 novels before I attempted to write On Fire Island as a script. I mean, as a book. So I already had the script. It was like a giant outline. And then I wrote it as a novel. And now it'll probably be a script.
Well, you've got it already written as a script, right? So you can just turn that in.
Yeah.
Nice.
I could.
Until
So-
they want to change it.
Wait,
Like,
I'm
why can't it be Cloud Island? Or why can't it be?
we like Fire Island, but can we put it on Mars? That's what I'm waiting for that.
I've got a script that I've been working on for years with a client, and we go back and forth. And the thing that keeps changing is the main character is a restaurateur, and what his restaurant serves, like what his the concept of the restaurant changes, and all the time it's gone from like this to that to this. And I've had the same thought, like, should I just keep the scenes? I should just go back to use the exact same scenes when he was an Asian fusion chef and just return those, because nothing's. But then I have that anxiety about, oh gosh, what if he like recognizes I'm just recycling old drafts? It might be disrespectful. There's so much anxiety. There's so much anxiety about that.
So much anxiety.
So I want to go back, Jane, just for logistic timeline purposes, so I'm not confused. So you wrote and sold your first screenplay. Was that the only one that you tried to sell then? From that point on, you were just writing novels after that experience?
Yeah, I sold a treatment to Universal about the game Mystery Date. Do you remember that game, Mystery Date? Mystery Date? No? Okay, I'll stop singing. That's not my forte. I sold a few things and nothing got made, and it was discouraging. And then I wrote the novel, and it was amazing. And
The 9 Women, One Dress. That was your first novel?
It was my first novel. The beautiful thing of working with one editor, one very smart editor, is just after being in this whole screenplay world, it was amazing to me. Amazing to me. And the fact that it was my book and not theirs, that's the hugest difference.
Oh.
You sell a screenplay and it's theirs. You're like, it's like a rental apartment. You're like, they're renting it from you and they're living in it. It's not your apartment anymore. Whatever they do inside it while they're renting it, you have to allow.
So if you write a screenplay and you sell it and you are working with them to change it in the editing process, so when they fired you, they hired someone else to work on the same script?
Yes. Like if you look at the movie Tootsie, right?
Totally not yours anymore.
No, not at all. If you look at the movie Tootsie, there's 10 screenwriters at the end in the
I've heard
credits,
this.
right? 10.
Yeah.
So when I first saw Tootsie and saw that, I thought, wow, that must have been such a fun room. With all this 10 people, right?
The collaboration. No,
that's just the Trail of Dead.
Yes, it was just like a death thing. It was like one was fired and the next one was brought on. It's amazing that the movie is so good and so well written because 10 people wrote it. Crazy.
It is a weird feeling, though, that what you're talking about. I've heard other screenwriters say it, that whole idea of, selling your idea and then being fired from your idea. And then how did that, was that devastating? I've actually heard some people say it's a relief. They've sort of rehashed their old idea again and again. Now they can just leave it alone. How did you feel?
It's a relief. I mean, I rewrote it like 30 times. It was also like, of course I was upset, but not really. I was ready to move on. You almost want to kill all the characters after you've rewritten something that many times. You're so sick of them. So yeah, it was fine. And they ended up ruining it, which was great satisfaction. And Mr. Weinstein himself told me we really effed that up. So that made me happy.
You should have kept me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it kind of like my mom would say, it is what it is. And that's how it is.
Right.
And it just makes me all the more appreciative of the process of writing a book where they're like, okay, let's pick out the cover now. I mean, could you imagine that would never happen? You know, no writer is helping with the poster for a movie, you know, so
No,
it's
that's a
nice.
fact.
Yes. It's all good.
So your second novel, I'm looking at your bio over here, Eliza Starts a Rumor. It says it's been optioned by NBC. So tell us what that is like.
That has been a completely different experience. I am working with this amazing producer. Her name is Dana Honor. She calls me, can we talk tomorrow, she'll say, and she fills me in on everything that's going on. I mean, everything is in a standstill right now because of the writer's strike and now the actor's strike. But she was so so communicative, so collaborative. I just loved it. I loved working. She hired a wonderful writer / showrunner named Wendy Hauser Campbell, who did a fantastic job with the script. And I couldn't have been happier. And I didn't want to write it. I wanted to keep writing novels, and I wanted to, you know, hand it over to someone who really knows how to write a television show, which is a unique thing. I've written television pilots, one of them, two of them actually, and I know how to do it, but I'm happy writing novels. I would never let anyone write on Fire Island without being a part of it, because it's like my baby, and I'm very attached to the place and the people in the book. But I was okay with Eliza being written by someone else, actually happy about it.
Question about like, so the TV, so when you optioned that to TV, how did I've never been in part of that process or heard anybody have that firsthand experience. Curious about when you optioned it, was it optioned as a, like, how do they present to you the option? Is it as a 4-episode series, you know, ongoing series? Like, how does the idea that TV, you know, the series is an indeterminate length, how does that work?
Well, it's funny that you asked that. Like, so I'm in discussions again about 9 Women, One Dress, which is really kind of a standalone series. Like, it would be 1 year, you know, just like almost a mini series. But
Right.
Eliza Starts A Rumor, the characters could go on, and that is the way that it was proposed to me. Like, they would follow the book for 1 or 2 seasons, and then it would take on a life of its own. Because Eliza Starts A Rumor is about 4 women who live in the Hudson Valley and their lives and how their lives intertwine. So it really just has tremendous legs. It could just go on and on and on. So there's a difference.
Yeah.
Not really a start and a finish, the way it is maybe with 9 Women, One Dress, which is the story of one dress at Bloomingdale's and 9 different women who wear it. So it has a start and a finish.
Oh, I love those sorts of stories. I love them. I love that connectedness that, you know, through objects. I think that's a great trope.
I would love that to come to life on the screen. I mean, that's when I wrote it, I was like, this is a movie. But as I told you, I didn't want to write another movie. So
right.
I was at the airport, in JFK Airport, New York, and a woman said to me, "You're a writer, right?" And usually I'm like, "Oh, please don't tell me an idea. Please don't tell me an idea."
Yeah.
But, because also, like, then you're like, "Oh, I already had that idea. Now I think I stole it." But anyway, she just came out with the idea. She was like, "I had a friend who worked at Bloomingdale's, and a dress was returned with formaldehyde on it." Yes. So I was like, "Oh, wow." Like, what happened to that dress? And I just started working backwards. So like, obviously the dead dress with the formaldehyde was the end of the book, but I just started going back and back about this one dress. And it was very fun. And it was a movie in my head. I was a screenwriter, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to write this as a novel. And it worked.
I love that feeling you get when someone finds out you're a writer and they get that excited look in their eyes, and then you're like, oh no, don't give me. No. There's a person in our friend group that figured out I'm a writer recently, and now I can tell she's trying to corner me with an idea. And now I'm doing the whole, like, you know, kind of evading, you know,
the evading dance.
Too many ideas.
When I first
so
became a screenwriter, I was excited because I'd been like a stay-at-home mom for so long. This is gonna sound nuts, but I was excited when you go to the doctor and it says, you go to a new doctor and it says what your job is when you fill out the form.
Mhm.
So I'd written mom, the whole time, and I'm like, screenwriter. So I wrote screenwriter. After 2 new doctors, I never wrote it again. The questions, like you're lying there in this like odd position. And like literally the head comes out and says, so I have an idea for a movie and I'm wondering, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then
That's worse than a bathroom corner.
it was terrible,
Yeah.
awful. I went back to writing mom. No questions there.
I love it.
So you said that on Fire Island, you wrote the script first, then you wrote the movie or wrote the novel. Is that right? You did it in that
Correct.
order. So
Yes.
do you always, have you done that with all your novels?
Not at all. So this is the only one that was a script first.
Okay.
I thought, wow, this is going to be easy. But the difference between screenwriting, so I had this great outline, but a screenplay is really just dialogue. It's really not much else, right? You're not supposed to go into great detail about what you and I look like or what we're wearing or what the room looks like, because it's kind of someone else's job. And they would just, your screenplay, they write novice on it because you're doing it wrong. So it was a big job. It was a big job to turn it over. It was also a big job because my editor the book is about 3 men. And my editor was not thrilled with me writing a book about 3 men because I write women's fiction. So what I did to fix that was I made the narrator of the novel one of the men's dead wife who just passed away. So she, at 37 years old, tells the story of one summer on Fire Island. And doing that took on such a life of its own. So much fun putting it through her, through this mind of someone that just passed away. And through the female mind, looking at these 3 men who the book's about. So it was interesting. It was an interesting transition. Also, the script is so much shorter than a novel. The script is 90 to 120 pages. It's a page per minute. A novel, you have to do full descriptions. I talked, whole chapters about what goes on in Fire Island, what Fire Island looks like, what she's thinking. You can't say what someone's thinking in a novel. You have to show it, right? I mean, in a screenplay, but in a novel, you could just go on and on about what someone's thinking. So it was an interesting transition from one to the other. Helpful, yes, but also I found it a little like limiting. It was a lot of pressure, but it was, in the end, I loved it. It was just a lot of pressure for me to make this book like my very best book, because I love Fire Island and I love the people, and I really wanted to show it in the light that I love about it.
What is your personal connection with Fire Island?
I met my husband there 30 years ago. And it's like, as people say, very cliched, it's my happy place. I brought up my 3 children there in the summers. But unlike New York City, Fire Island is this tiny community where there are no cars and people ride their bicycles and everyone knows each other's children. And, if you fall down, someone else is going to pick you up. It's just a beautiful community. Much different than New York City, which I do love as well, but it's just completely, 2 ends of the spectrum. And I fell in love with them. We bought a house there and we raised our kids there and we never really left. So it's unique. It's a unique place.
Well, I just bought it on Amazon while we were talking, because that trope you're talking about, that whole told from the point of view of the dead, like Lovely Bones was one of my favorite books ever. I just love that sort of that point of view. So yeah, I can't wait to read it.
Thank you. I think you're going to love it. It's a really interesting point of view. It's not sad. People are very worried that you'll probably cry a little bit if you're a crier, but it's not sad. It's much more funny than it is sad. So I hope you enjoy it. Let me know.
I will, for sure. And so I have a question kind of on, you've moved a lot in your career, it sounds like, you've had access. So like, have you had one agent, one manager kind of working with you on both film and and books, or did you make a transition there?
I did make a transition there. I had a wonderful entertainment lawyer who helped do my scripts named George Jean Shang, and I worked with him for years. And then when I wrote my book, 9 Women, One Dress, I gave it to a friend of mine who's an old time actress. Her husband's a big actor, and she doesn't act anymore, but she reads all my stuff. It's Phoebe Cates, and Kevin Kline is her husband. So Phoebe would read my things, and she was such an amazing supporter of my work and just a good friend. And when she read this, she said, I'll give this to my sister. She works at Penguin Random House. And I, for some reason, had no idea that her sister worked at Penguin Random House, but like, lucky me, she said to me, she's not going to read it because she doesn't read submissions that just come from nowhere, but maybe she'll give you an idea of what to do with that. Long story short, she told her what it was about. Her sister Valerie read it. She fell in love with it. She pitched it to Penguin Random House, and they said to me, you have to get an agent for us to buy this. So here I am. It's so hard to get a literary agent, so hard, but I already sold it. So basically, I had my choice. Like, anyone I spoke to wanted to represent me. I already sold the book. It was amazing luck because it's very hard to get an agent. Long story short, I have a different agent now. I'm really happy with everything. And yes, so I have switched around, and it was not a smooth, perfect road, but I'm very happy where it left me off.
Terrific. That's great.
Yes. And I mean, I would like to write screenplays again. I'm dying to write a stage play, but I am all of a sudden on this 1 book a year thing. So I think it's going to wait a little bit. And with this writer's strike going on right now, there's nothing better to do than to write novels. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And that might be going on for a while.
So sad. So horrible. And this whole AI thing is so scary. So scary.
Yeah. There's, I think that I'm hopeful that those of us that write more, I don't want to say character driven, but just more less genre-y, I guess, maybe that will slow down. Like the AI won't be as of a threat to us, maybe. I mean, fingers crossed. I mean, I write women's fiction and memoir, so maybe it won't touch me as much. I mean, that's I'm hoping.
No, I mean, you have to hope that. Like my one of the producers of Eliza Starts A Rumor is also a television writer, and she's been on strike, and her, what's it called? The thing you hold up, her sign,
Picket.
Yes, her picket sign says Chat GPT didn't go to fat camp. That's my favorite sign that I've seen. I mean, but it's true, right? You can't, there's just no way.
Right.
But
yeah. Have you played with it? Have you played with Chat GPT?
Have you?
Yeah.
Of course I have. I played with it's so I mean, whatever it came back with, my book that I'm writing now has a lot of things I didn't really know much about. There's a surfer, there's a ceramicist. So I was playing with that, but there was nothing I could use. I mean, it was written like by chat. You could tell it was written by ChatGPT.
Right.
But but you can riff on it. It's kind of like an author assistant. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Like just a brainstorming buddy, maybe, or.
It's not much different than Googling something.
Yeah.
That's how I've used it. I've asked it questions because, Google's now it feels like an ad service. If you put in something like, what are the best 10 short stories to read if you're an author, if you want to be author, you'll get 10, ads for collections of stories or something. So it is a way to push through that, which has become a cultural thing, right? To push through ads whenever you can. But every time you use it for that purpose, you're feeding its bigger purpose, and we don't really know what that is yet.
Oh,
I don't know.
that's what you think? We're feeding all the ideas and it's all collecting together until we're eliminated?
Well, I think that we're feeding it like it's supposed to get smarter, right? So yeah, I do tend towards like the sci-fi telling of every story when it comes to this kind of thing, like technology. But it does seem like the smarter you make it, the more likely it might, to use that example, go to fat camp. Like it'll figure out like, oh, I'm going to scan all the blogs of people who've experienced this, and I don't know. I mean, I want it to go away so I don't have to think about it, but
it's not going to go away.
no, it's not going away.
Well, maybe it could be outlawed.
Or it could just become something that's not free to use, and then there's licensing and rights, and then that'll just chip away at it, right? And that's, who knows?
I don't know. I mean, their licensing and rights are going to be less money than it would cost to hire you or I. So I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, but luckily we're not the ones that have to figure it out, because that is
No.
way above anything I'd be capable of.
Right. Yeah, I can write the sci-fi ending, but I can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Solve the problem.
I could have the AI fall in love with the IA or something and then see what happens. But that's the extent of it.
So I wanted to know. Oh, go ahead.
No,
I was going to change. I was going to change the subject.
I want off the AI topic too. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
I was curious. You mentioned that one of the things you like better about writing novels is that when you're working with one editor, it's much easier and more pleasant than when you write a screenplay and you're working with all of these people. So what else about writing novels do you prefer? Like, it sounds like you've kind of you're still dabbling a little bit with screenplays and maybe the screen or the stage play, but really you have transitioned into being a novelist. You enjoy it. What is that about writing novels that you prefer over writing the screenplays?
There's a lot of things I prefer on both sides, I would say. I like, even though I think it's difficult and sometimes takes me forever to craft like the perfect sentence or anything like that, it does feel really great when I'm done and I read it back and I'm really happy with it. And as far as screenplays go, that's just like dialogue is much simpler, right? You don't speak in these, I don't know, you don't speak with drama. You don't speak in the way that you would writing a description of something. Ever.
Yeah, almost. We don't speak in complete sentences ever, even.
Exactly. So it's just it's a wonderful, like, honing your craft and writing a metaphor, it's fun. It's fun to write a metaphor. It's fun. So I love that about it. I love that it's my own, as I explained. I love that. The time, which is going to sound like counter to what you're asking, but the time it takes to write a novel, to really soak into one thing, it's like a year. I could write a screenplay in 6 to 8 weeks. I don't know how good it would be, but I could, especially if I had a novel to base it off of. But when you sit with something for a year, when you sit with these characters for such a long time, they could really become a part of you. And I write very visually, so I still have that kind of screenplay feeling in my head that they're a part of me. But I also love that I could do whatever I want. Like unless you're Martin Scorsese, you can't be picking out the music for your screenplay, right? But you can for your book. You could say they're listening to, and you could say whatever you want, which is also really fun because I love music and I love being able to put music and cultural things into my books. And
do you have playlists for each novel?
I have a great playlist for On Fire Island.
Is it on Spotify?
Novel. It's on Spotify. It's called On Fire Island. And it's great. I love it.
I'll put the link in the show notes.
It was very fun to create that. It really was. And I like listen to music a lot when I'm writing.
Can you do that? I can't do that. I mean, I have my husband's office is right here. So when he's in meetings and stuff, I have the noise canceling headphones with music on, but it has to be like ambient or nothing with words.
So this is what I discovered. I discovered it in a very strange way. I was writing Eliza Starts A Rumor, and my editor pointed something out that needed to be fixed, but neither of us had the solution. And it was a problem. It was really faulting the book.
Which novel was it?
Eliza Starts A Rumor. And it was really like a problem that I had to figure out. I could not figure it out. And I am not one to say I have writer's block, but I couldn't get past this thing. So I was at this place called Blow Dry Bar. I think that's what it's called. It's like the bottom of Bloomingdale's in Soho, New York City. And I'm getting my hair blown out by this woman. On the screen in front of me are romantic comedies playing all over these televisions. And there's rap music on in the background. And she's talking. And I have my
This is chaos.
Chaos. And during that chaos, I figured out the solution. And I thought it was just an accident, but I've realized it's not an accident. It's very similar to, you know, when you're trying to think of a word and you can't remember the word, and then you just start doing something else and you immediately come up with the word or the name. It's like that. It's something about your mind being distracted that allows you to come up with something. So it kept on, I started doing this thing, Orange Theory, which is a workout, which I dread, but I go, and it's loud as can be. And I find myself in the middle of Orange Theory running out to the locker room to write down what I figured out. And so I think that somehow this chaos and this noise lets me think sometimes in a way that, in a way when I'm really trying, doesn't happen for me.
So when you
That's
are
like-
writing, you are listening to loud chaos, or just when you have a problem and you can't figure it out, that's when you get your answer?
Okay, I could write my first draft to in loud chaos,
Uh-huh.
no problem. I could write it on the
Right.
subway, I could write it in a concert, I could write it anywhere with noise. When I go to edit, and I really have to think about, especially about like what my editor said in the notes, you know, and come up with that kind of like little solution, I need quiet. Not a big idea, but just the polishing of something. Then I need it to be quiet because I have to really think through every word. And that's what's so much more difficult about a book than a screenplay, but also satisfying because of the
Yeah.
perfection level.
The perfection level.
It's
Awesome.
literally what
Yeah.
the person reading. There's no actor saying the line. There's no second chance. It's in the book. It's published, done. So yeah, it's a lot of responsibility.
What is your, I love process. So what is your like day-to-day process of writing your novels?
Usually, my best days of writing are when I start early in the morning and I don't get involved in any of the minutia of the day. I don't speak to my 3 kids. I don't, you know, look at the bills. I don't think about the fact that my closet's a freaking mess. I just wake up and only think about whatever it is I'm writing. And I could do that for hours. I could do that for 6 hours if I had to, you know, if I'm allowed to not be interrupted. So that my process is really to wake up when your mind is so clear and just get at it. The minute I start filling my mind up with other things, I don't have the same result in my writing. It's fine for editing, but not for really just spilling out the ideas on the paper. And I'm a bit of a planner, but I'm also a bit of a seat of a pants kind of writer. I map out the whole story so I know that I have the beginning and the middle and the end. And it's all right there on note cards, but I never really look at it again. After I know that I'm done and that I have all those parts, then I just fly by the seat of my pants.
That's interesting.
That happens to me too. I'll end up writing all the scenes. Like I'll write that outline or whatever. I'll do the outline, but then by the time it comes to write, I never look at those cards. I wonder why I'm such a frantic note taker, but then I never look at my notes. But I don't know. It's been working since college. The whole
I
writing
write notes on my phone a lot that I do look at. Like a funny thing will happen and I'll write it on my phone. And then I will go through my notes on my phone and see if I could fit that funny idea somewhere.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You talked about writing a book a year. Is that a pace that you have fallen into, or is that something you map out like professionally? Like, how'd you get to that?
I don't know how this happened to me. I'm not exactly thrilled about it, but suddenly it's happened. Like I got a 2-book deal. I wrote Eliza and then a shoe story on, you know, on that schedule. Then as I was finishing up a shoe story, I sold on Fire Island. So all of a sudden that was on that schedule. You know what I mean? And that felt
Right,
kind
right.
of eager because I had the script and I'm like, I could do this in a year, no problem. But then I sold a book called 7 Summer Weekends, which they didn't like. I didn't write the whole book. I wrote a couple of chapters and then an outline. And that's how I sold 7 Summer Weekends to my same editor, my same publisher. They said, we love the title. We'd like it to be set in Fire Island. We don't really love the story. I said, okay, great. What was I talking about? Okay, great. I had no idea what the book was about, but I said, okay, great, let's do it. And I ended up finishing that book. I'm turning it in the second draft, July 30th. Miraculously, my editor loved what I came up with, but that was pretty scary that like I had this close deadline and no idea what I was going to write. First time that ever happened to me where I really sold something. I just had no idea what it was going to be. It worked out.
When you are, I know how to find ideas for stories, and lots of ideas come to me, and I have them in a, the Rolodex in my mind of all these ideas. But when it comes time to like starting a new project, if one of those ideas you've had in the past doesn't really sing to you at the moment, what is, and now you've got this deadline and the idea that you thought you were going to work with is not going to work because they don't like it. So how did you scramble and come up with something that you wanted to spend a year with?
It was pretty scary. And it's a great question. And even my agent was like worried that I was going to be unhappy for the whole year. I had a crazy, crazy year though. I had a year where first my daughter got married. I have 3 daughters. My daughter got married in September in New York. She got married in March in India because her husband's from India. So I had these 2 weddings. In between those 2 weddings, my youngest daughter, who has reoccurring thyroid cancer, the cancer came back. So in between these beautiful occasions, we had this horrible bout, of a month and a half of surgeries and treatments and all of that. And she's okay. She's doing fantastic. But point being, I don't even remember, somewhere in between or during all of that, I wrote a whole novel. And I don't even remember when I wrote that whole novel or how I wrote the whole, and it's pretty good. So I don't even know what to tell you. I don't know what happened, but it's almost done.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That is wow. It's like divinely inspired or something. I don't know. That's weird. It was channeled.
Yeah, it worked. But yeah, it took a lot of finessing and throwing out ideas, picking something up and saying, yeah, maybe this doesn't work. I wrote like 6 beginnings for this novel until I struck on one that worked for everybody that was reading it. My agent and my editor. Oh, this is great. Go with this. That kind of thing.
So you started, that sounds hard. So you started 6 different ideas and you wrote the beginning, like a couple chapters, or?
I wrote it was basically, let's take a woman and have her life fall apart a little bit and then have it come back together, right? Like, so that's a typical trope. So the way it fell apart, I toyed with different things until I came up with the one that was really, hit home with everybody, meaning myself, my editor, and my agent.
Right.
And I've never done that. I've never been as collaborative. It's never been just this blank page like this, but it worked. And I took things from life. Like after I went to India, I added a whole chapter about a man from India. Like the book actually is completely enjoyable and maybe one of my favorites, but I just don't, for the life of me, I never thought it would get there like this.
What was the title again? They liked the title.
7 Summer Weekends. It's a great title, right?
Yeah.
And what if they want me to bring it back to Fire Island, which I did.
Do you think that subsequent books then will stay in Fire Island? Do you think that you'll start a series of Fire Island books?
It seems like I will. it's not all I want to do in life is write about Fire Island. Fire Island is, I don't want to call it boring, because it's certainly not boring, but it's like Groundhog's Day. You know, it's not like Ellen Hildebrand writes about Nantucket. Well, Nantucket's a big place with cars and different people. This place is just the same every day, every summer. You know, on Monday nights, I play softball. On Tuesdays, it's like that. Every day is the same from summer to summer. And there's just not that much to really write about. And to do it justice, you know, I mean, I'm not going to come and write a murder mystery, although someone just did that, actually. You know, we'll see. I don't know. Life is long. I'm sure I'll write more books on Fire Island.
So what is you've got 4 published novels, is that right? 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Okay. Which one should I read first?
I mean, I'd like you to read On Fire Island first, because we're talking about it so much. And then I think you could just grab any other one that you want. The one I didn't speak most about was A Shoe Story. I feel like it's my orphan book, and I actually love it very much. It's the story of a girl who comes to New York City and ends up in the house, dog sitting in a house of a shoe-obsessed woman, and wears her shoes throughout her month's stay, and what happens to her. And
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's very fun. But the reason I really love it is that, aside from the shoes, which was so much fun to research, and I had actually Louboutin like gives me shoes now if I do an event, which is like,
wow.
Yeah. So in some ways, it's my most successful book because I've got a lot of shoes from it. But I took my I intertwined my father's journey in the Coast Guard in World War II into this book.
Oh, wow.
And my dad passed away when I was 11. So spending like that time researching, you know, a 17-year-old kid from Brooklyn leaving New York and invading Sicily, Salerno, and Normandy, I took his letters. I took the number of his Coast Guard ship and traced, you know, the journey. It was really an amazing experience. And I felt close to him in a way that I hadn't, because, you know, no one talks about their experience in a war, and especially not to an 11-year-old kid, right? So it was just a very unknown territory for me with my dad, and it was amazing. And I felt like I did him just, you know, it was just nice. It's a great experience. So that's in A Shoe Story, believe it or not. Doesn't sound like it would be, but it is.
I think that's the one I'm going to get.
Uh-huh.
That sounds amazing.
This is what I like about cozy mysteries, women's fiction. These are genres that I don't read very often, I'll admit, but the way into stories is always so fascinating. It's, you know, I feel like every sort of psychological mystery or thriller kind of starts in a very similar pace, but I would be so smitten to read a book about a woman who walks in, house sits, and finds like they're a shoe obsessed woman. It's just such an interesting discovery, you know. They feel like great conversation starters, which is why they make great novels, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm reading On Fire Island first, so. Thank
you, Eric. Any idea comes from a little nugget, right?
Right.
A tiny thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's kind of where, like, when you were talking about how you had this year of kind of bookended with these beautiful moments of tragedy in between, like, you never know when those seeds of story are going to come, and you never know when you're going to need them. And so I think we talk a lot about sort of the soft process, I guess, of being like how to get to story, how to be receptive, and those things. And I think, yeah, you have to be open to, it might be a tough few months, but you might need that story more than ever at that time to
And you
get
might need
through.
and the process of writing about something besides yourself, that escape is really a gift. Things are not great, you know.
Because anything.
Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say anything can happen.
Yes, it can happen. And if you wait around, a big lesson in On Fire Island, if you want to take a lesson from it, is about, you know, life happens and you still have to live, and you still have to laugh, and you still have to get through it, right? No matter what time in your life is, good, bad, whatever, still have to get through it. So that's a lot of On Fire Island. And you know, when I wrote 9 Women, One Dress, my daughter had just first became ill and she was going to LaGuardia High School, which is the fame school, you know, the fame. And she was fainting. And she would call and say, I fainted, I'm at the nurse's office, come get me. And it stressed her out that I had to go downtown, cross town to pick her up in the mad rush, you know, worried about her fainting. So I decided to plant myself in the New York Public Library across the street from her school. And I said to her, I'm just going to sit here and write that novel that I've been wanting to write. So literally her illness pushed me to sit my butt down in a chair on the corner of 65th and Amsterdam and write and just wait for the phone call, which took all the stress away from her because I was right across the street and she wasn't putting me out. There was no mad rush. And I would be there when she needed me. And I wrote the whole book there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Homeless people all around me that I didn't notice were homeless. Like my best friend was like homeless Harry. He's like, it's movie day, Jane, come on. Let's go to the other room and watch a movie. I'm like, all right.
So when you were talking about when you came up with the idea for the new book that hasn't released yet, you said you were looking at the trope so do you start with a character or do you start with an idea?
An idea. I start with this book aside. Well, I guess maybe the idea was just the title, right? For this, but usually I start with a little morsel and I can usually trace it right back to one conversation that just keeps working in my mind and evolves. I mean, do you feel the same way?
I usually start with character. I have a character in my head and then I wonder, you know, what her story is. And she tells me.
That's so interesting. I've never done that. I've always started
always a person.
It's a person for you too, Eric?
It's always a person. And well, I think I live with many people and like potential characters. And it's usually when one of those, you know, friends, we're all friends here, right? I can say that I have voices in my head. It's like one of those voices, something happens to that voice in a situation. And I think, oh, that's an interesting contrast. Like if that person who is a responsible social worker happens across, you know, something wild, what happens then? And so usually, yeah, it's the marriage of those things right there.
The character and the what if.
Yeah, the character and the contrast.
For a shoot story, I will say that it was a little bit character driven because I was sitting on the Fire Island ferry and you know Zabar's, you familiar with Zabar's? No.
All too familiar with a Jewish wife whose family sends her like bagels and things for all the time. Yeah, all the time.
Zabar's is like the biggest food store in Manhattan. It's as much New York City as like the Empire State Building. You know, it's an icon. So the owner of it lives a block away from me in Fire Island, and he's in his 90s now. And we were sitting on the ferry, and he started chatting to me about how all his friends were dead, which is like a thing my mom used to always talk about too. All my friends are dead. It's a big old person thing. And he made a joke like that he was going to go see a shrink so that he'd have someone to talk to. And I thought it was so funny. And somehow that conversation had me thinking about this girl, Esme, in a shoe story, befriending an older man in the park, which she does when she comes to New York. And my conversation with Saul Zabar evolved into Esme befriending this guy, Sidecats, who owns an advertising business in New York City. So that was kind of driven by a person as opposed to a thought.
Interesting. I'm gonna add that one too. I love the entry. I love the entry point. Just the whole shoe thing. I thought.
Yeah.
I get envious when I hear those sort of inciting moments or those connections because I could never make them. I love shoes, but I couldn't like make that a character. I couldn't springboard a story from that. I love it.
Awesome. Well, Jane,
we're gonna have our Jane Rosen reading club over here.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about books we read one day, and we're both gonna be reading one of Jane's books, and we'll have to pass that episode along.
Yeah, I'll have to invite me back to chat about them.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely. It has been completely delightful talking with you, Jane. Thank
Oh,
you so much for coming on and talking with us about books and writing and all cool things author life.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Have a
Thank you. It was
fabulous,
wonderful to meet you both.
yes, have a fabulous day under the Brooklyn Bridge. I love your view.
Bridge out my window.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Well, if I'm ever in Portland,
Yeah, oh, yeah. Look
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
us up.
definitely.
I will.
Or Eugene. I'll drive to Portland for you though.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If I'm ever in,
All right. Have a great day. Bye for
thank you.
now.
Enjoy the rest of the summer.
Take care.